We hear all the time about America's energy abundance, how it's a sign of our strength. But what if the system itself, the very thing that delivers that energy, is actually a disaster just waiting to happen? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden and, frankly, shocking fragility of the U.S. power grid.
So to really get to the heart of this, you just need to remember two words: snap versus bend. Think of the US grid like a dry, brittle twig. What happens when you put pressure on it? It doesn't bend, right? It just snaps. Now compare that to the grids in places like France and China. They're more like a green branch. They're resilient, they're flexible, they're actually built to bend without breaking. And that one single difference in design philosophy, well, it's the difference between a minor, managed disruption and a total catastrophic collapse.
Okay, so how does a system this massive, this complex, just snap? The answer, it turns out, lies in a critical vulnerability that's been overlooked for a very long time. Let's dig in and really look at the anatomy of that collapse.
And this is where you really need to shift your thinking. The problem isn't about not having enough power. The US is swimming in resources. The real issue is delivery. I mean, think about it. You can have all the power plants on the planet, but if you can't actually get that electricity to homes and businesses, what good is it? It's just power on paper. The system has what's called a single-point delivery vulnerability, and that's the weak link in the whole chain.
And what's so scary is how simple the process of failure really is. It all starts with load stress, a major heat wave, a crazy winter storm, everyone cranking their AC or heat at once. One critical component gets pushed way past its limit, and bang, it fails. And that's where the dominoes start to fall. That one single failure kicks off a cascading outage, spreading like a virus across the region, and before you know it, you've got a full system collapse. So it's time to meet the villain of this story, the high-voltage transformer. This thing right here, it's the operational Achilles heel of the entire US grid. And you've got to understand, these aren't parts you can just pick up at the local hardware store. They are massive, custom-built pieces of machinery. And the ones we're relying on every single day, they're old. We don't have spares stockpiled anywhere, and they are dangerously, perilously difficult to replace. So, just how old are we talking? Get ready for this. 70%. That's not a typo. A staggering 70% of these critical transformers in the US are already past their 25-year design life. They are literally operating on borrowed time every single day. Okay, so here's the multi-billion-dollar question, right? What happens when one of these aging giants finally gives up the ghost? When it buckles under the pressure? How fast can we get a new one in place? 2 years. You heard me right. That's the average lead time to get one replacement. We're not talking weeks, not even months. We're talking years. It's an incredibly complex process that depends on a really fragile global supply chain. So a single failure doesn't mean a blackout for a day or two. It could mean a localized blackout that just stretches on and on. When you hear all this, a system this fragile, it almost feels like it was designed this way on purpose. So how on earth did we get here? Well, that brings us to the why behind all of this weakness, something we're calling the profit trap paradox. So, what is the profit trap? Well, it's really the core conflict that's baked right into the grid's DNA. For decades, the US system hasn't been optimized for resilience or for national security. Nope. It's been optimized for one thing: short-term market profit. It's a whole design philosophy that says immediate financial returns are more important than long-term stability.
And let's be clear, this isn't some new problem. This has been the guiding principle for nearly 50 years. The fundamental goal has always been about financial efficiency, not engineering resilience. That's a huge distinction. And you can see the results of that philosophy all around us, can't you? It means maximizing returns for shareholders instead of doing crucial maintenance. It means we have decaying power plants and transmission lines that are decades past their prime. It means the market incentives actually encourage companies to ignore these huge systemic engineering problems. Our energy security, the thing we all depend on, is basically treated like just another stock to be traded on Wall Street.
But here's the thing. This level of fragility, it's not inevitable. It doesn't have to be this way. It's a choice. And to really see that, we just have to look at how other major economies have designed their grids. They've built them not to snap, but to bend.
And when you put them side by side, the differences in design are just stark. Okay, look at transmission redundancy. The US has very little.
France and China, they build in high, sometimes even oversized redundancy. What about control? The US relies on a decentralized, market-driven system. They use centralized government control. And honestly, the response to stress tells you everything you need to know. The US snaps, and you get a cascading blackout. France and China bend. They use planned, controlled cuts to keep the whole system stable. So let's just look at the two outcomes right here. On the one hand, you have the US snap scenario. A single failure spirals into a massive collapse that could literally last for months. And on the other hand, you have the bend alternative, a resilient system that manages stress with controlled outages, and by shifting the load around, it stabilizes the whole grid. I mean, that's the difference right there. Managed disruption versus total system failure.
So what's the big takeaway from looking at France and China? It's this. Real energy security isn't just about having a lot of resources. It's about the design of the system. They get their resilience from intentional planning, from building in that redundancy, and from having centralized control. It is a fundamentally different way of thinking about the problem. And all of this brings us to a really powerful and frankly pretty sobering conclusion. The state of the American grid, it's not a fluke. It's not some random accident. It is, quite simply, a failure by choice.
And that's the central paradox we're left with, isn't it? The United States is incredibly rich in resources, but it is operationally fragile. We have all this amazing energy potential, but the system we built to deliver it is designed to snap at the first sign of trouble. Let's be absolutely clear about this. This vulnerability didn't just appear out of thin air. It was built. It was the result of thousands of decisions made over decades. Every time the choice was made to prioritize short-term profit over long-term infrastructure, every time maintenance was deferred, every time those systemic choke points were ignored, it led us directly to where we are today. So, if the grid's fragility is the result of past choices, that means we now face a new one. Do we continue down this same path with a system that's just waiting to snap? Or do we finally decide to build one that's designed to bend? The real question now is, what choice will be made next?